Welcome again to the Old Principle, 老校长的节目. And we are actually studying English for 30 minutes of English. And today's story is an interesting one. Lots of interesting new words. So we will ask our professional story reader to come up here. Okay, Mrs. A, you want to join me here? And this is number 59.
Yes.
When the wind blows. 当这个风刮的时候，刮风. Okay? Go ahead, sweetheart.
Years ago, a farmer owned land along the Atlantic seacoast. He constantly advertised for hired hands. Most people were reluctant to work on farms along the Atlantic. They dreaded the awful storms that came from the ocean. Buildings and crops were damaged or destroyed. As the farmer interviewed applicants for the job, he received a steady stream of refusals. Finally, a short, thin man, well past middle age, approached the farmer. "Are you a good farm hand?" the farmer asked him. "Well, I can sleep when the wind blows," answered the man. Although puzzled by this answer, the farmer was desperate for help, so he hired the man. The little man worked well around the farm, busy from dawn to dusk, and the farmer felt satisfied with the man's work. Then, one night, the wind began howling outside. It was the dreaded Atlantic storm. Jumping out of bed, the farmer grabbed a lantern and rushed next door to the hired hand's sleeping quarters. He shook the little man and yelled, "Get up! A storm is coming! Tie things down before they blow away!" The little man rolled over in bed and said firmly, "No, sir. I told you I can sleep when the wind blows." Enraged by the response, the farmer was tempted to fire him on the spot. Instead, he hurried outside to prepare for the storm. To his amazement, he discovered that all of the haystacks had been covered with tarpaulins. The cows were in the barn. The chickens were in the coops, and the doors were barred. The shutters were tightly secured. Everything was tied down. Nothing could blow away. The farmer then understood what his hired hand meant when he returned to his bed. So he did return to his bed to also sleep while the wind blew. When I read this, I asked myself,
Am I prepared for surprises?
Yes.
You are?
It's
We hope so.
important. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, sweetheart, for reading that.
Sure.
And we're moving on now. Number 59, When the Wind Blows. Okay. Let's start with the beginning of the lesson. Okay. The beginning of the lesson. Years ago, a farmer owned land, 他含有一块地 along the Atlantic sea coast. Of course, the Atlantic is 大西洋. Okay. On the west, we have 太平洋, but on the east of the United States, at least, we have 大西洋. Okay. Sea coast, 海岸. 大西洋海岸. So this is where his land is. And he constantly advertised for hired hands. Okay, 经常 okay, 经常 constantly 经常 advertise 登广告 advertised for 他要什么？他要雇工 ，OK， 他要这个how do you say 雇工 ，OK， 雇工 ，OK， go ahead. Most people were reluctant. What does reluctant mean? 不大愿意 okay, to work on the farms along the Atlantic. 在这个靠大西洋的这些农场，他们雇工不大愿意工作。Go ahead. They dreaded, okay? They dreaded, okay? You ought to look at this because we're going to see this. I'm going to use dreaded again a little later in the story, okay? And the meaning is almost the same, but used a little differently. 他们害怕 the awful storms, 很糟糕的这个风暴 okay, awful 糟糕的风暴 that 来自 the ocean 大西洋这是海里面的 so this is what they were afraid of. Okay, buildings and crops were damaged or destroyed. Okay, so buildings 建筑物 and crops 这个how do you say 庄 well anyway the crops is what do you have crops like your corn and your the stuff that you plant all of this is crops were damaged 受损害 damaged 受损害 or 破坏 okay, damaged. So the vegetables and the corn and the potatoes and the fruit and whatever else, all these things were sometimes 受损害 or 破坏 or destroyed. Okay, going on. The farmer interview 跟一些人面谈 interviewed applicants. An applicant is 申请者 okay, 申请者 so a person who is 申请工作 is called an applicant, okay, for the job. Okay. He received a steady stream of refusals. He received a steady stream of refusals. 一连串的拒绝 一连串的拒绝 a steady stream of refusals. People didn't want to do it. They didn't want to have the 麻烦, the problems, the issues, the frustrations of working there. Going on. Finally, a short, thin man. Okay, short, thin man, past middle age. Okay, past middle age. Am I past middle age? You probably all think that I'm old. Well, I am, and I am past middle age. 中年时期, he's already past that. He's short, he's thin, 很瘦, okay? He approached the farmer, 靠近 the farmer. In other words, he came to the farmer. Approach just means he came to the farmer. Okay, the farmer asked the question, are you a good farmhand? Okay, what is a farmhand? A farmhand is somebody who works on a farm. Okay, so that's what a farmhand is. Are you a good person for working on the farm? The farmer asked him. Going on. And now look at what he answers. He said, well, I can sleep well when the wind blows. I can sleep when the wind blows, answered the man. I can see, the farmer asked, are you a good worker? 很会工作吗? And the person applying for the job, 申请这个工作的那位, okay, he said, well, I can sleep when the wind blows. Now we stop right here. Did he answer the question? In a way, no. And you will see here now the farmer's reaction going on. Although puzzled, okay, the farmer was puzzled. He didn't quite understand what he meant. I can sleep when the wind blows. He didn't understand. He was puzzled by this answer. But the farmer was desperate. The farmer was desperate. What does that mean? Desperate. 迫不及待. 迫不及待. What does that mean? He needed somebody to work now. He had to have somebody now. 迫不及待. Okay, he was desperate for help. He needed help, so he hired the man. He said, good, you can work for me. He hired the man. Going on. The little man worked well around the farm. So, around the farm, he did a good job. From dawn to dusk, he was busy. Dawn, 黎明, to dusk, dusk, 黄昏, 黎明, 到黄昏. And the farmer felt satisfied. The farmer was 满意. See, he was satisfied with the man's work. Not too bad. He's working out okay. He's doing a good job. Going on. Then, one night, the wind began to howl, began howling. When the wind blows hard, we say the wind is howling. It's making a noise. Have you ever heard, ooh, ooh? Have you ever heard the wind is howling? It actually makes sounds almost like a musical instrument, but it's 可怕的 music, okay? Very fearful music. The wind was howling. That means it was blowing very hard, howling. And the harder it blew, the more sound it made. It was howling outside. It was the dreaded, what does that mean? Remember? 可怕的大西洋的风暴. The dreaded Atlantic storm. 终于这个风暴就来了. Go ahead. Jumping out of bed, the farmer grabbed his lantern and rushed next door to the hired hand. Okay. And the hired hand's sleeping quarters. Okay. Jumped out of bed. What does that mean? That means that you jump out of bed, 跳起来. It just means that you just don't get up easy, man. You go boom, and you're off and running. Jumping out of bed, the farmer grabbed, 拿了. What is a lantern? A lantern is a 提灯, okay? In those days, they were 油灯. They were these oil lamps. We call them kerosene lamps. 油灯. You can still buy them. You can still see them some places. Of course, people don't use them now, but you can still buy them. Very interesting. He grabbed the lantern and rushed, 急忙的, next door, 到隔壁, okay, the hired hand's sleeping quarters, okay, 这个故宫的睡觉的这个宿舍, sleeping quarters, 这个宿舍睡觉的地方. Going on. Next. He shook the little man. I can imagine. Get up! Get up! The storm is out! Get up! He yelled, get up! A storm is coming. Well, the wind is already howling, so the storm was already there. The storm is coming. Tie down the things before they blow away. Okay, now, to tie down the things, okay, to tie is 绑, 用绳子绑, okay. Tie down things, okay, before they blow away. Tie them down, 不然的话他们会被风吹走. Okay, tie them down. 绑好. Okay, go ahead. The little man, I can imagine this, rolled over and he said in the bed and said firmly, no, sir. I told you I can sleep well when the wind blows. Okay, now, if you were the boss, if you were the farmer, and you heard that, see, he didn't understand in the beginning. So when he heard the little man said, no, sir, I told you, I can sleep well when the wind blows. 当风吹的时候，我会睡得很舒服，睡得很深，很好。Next. Enraged the farmer, he was ready to do what? He was ready to by the response. 他的反应只是他非常恼怒. He was very unhappy, angry. The farmer was tempted. 刚好有这个试探 to fire him on the spot. 借故炒鱿鱼. 借故. On the spot means right then, right there, at that time, on the spot, just at that place. 但是 instead, he hurried, 急忙的 outside to prepare for the storm. So he didn't even call for the man. Of course, the man was sound asleep. He rolled over and went back to sleep. You know, he said, no problem. So he just rolled over and back to sleep. The farmer, he didn't understand. He didn't know what was happening. So he ran outside to prepare for the storm. 准备这个要来的这个风暴. Next. To his amazement, 他很惊奇啊, he discovered that all of the haystacks had been covered with tarpaulins. Okay, what is this? Of course, amazement, 他很惊奇, that he discovered that all of the haystacks, okay, 草菇, they used to, in the old days, they used to take the grass and the 草, and they used to put it in stacks, you know, a pile, and we called it a haystack. Two words together, 两个字并在一起, hay 就是草, stack is a little pile, okay? And so he discovered that the haystacks had been covered, 已经这个遮盖起来 with what? 用什么? Tarpaulin. Actually, my father would say tarp. He would never say tarpaulin. This is the proper word. What is tarpaulin? Tarpaulin is just 这个一块布, 是一块布. 平常这个布会防水. When I was young, tarps were very heavy. They were black, and they had oil on them. But nowadays, tarps are made out of plastic. 现在是塑胶做的. And you put the tarp over the top, and then you tie it down. So bang, 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 bang. And the grass, the hay, will not blow away. So in his amazement, it was all tied down. Go ahead. Next. The cows were in the barn. 牛在牛房. Okay. The chickens were in the coops. 鸡在这个鸡房. Of course, because it was night. Chickens are always inside. Okay. And the doors were barred. Okay. Do you know what a bar is a 一块木头. Okay. And so he actually put some wood, some muto, on the doors so the wind wouldn't blow the door in, okay? And the shutters, 窗页, were tightly secured, 已经双好了. Okay, so you can see he had done very well. He had prepared. Everything was okay. Go ahead. Everything was tied down. Nothing could be blown away. 没有一样可以能够被这个暴风雨吹走. Everything was secure. Everything was in place. Tied 已经绑好了啊. Go ahead. The farmer then understood what his hired hand meant. 他现在才明白他的雇工所说的了. So he returned to his bed. So he returned to his house, returned to his bed also to sleep, while the wind blew and blew and blew. The storm was bad, but there was nothing to worry about. Go ahead. When I read this, I asked myself, when I read this story, I asked myself this question: am I prepared for surprises? Okay, now we're going to ask Mrs. Ash to come here. And we come down to the last minute or so here. We got a minute here. When you read a story like this, what do you think about?
To be prepared for any crisis,
Okay,
definitely.
but to be prepared ahead of time.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and so if you do your homework well, actually, I can tell you a good, for instance, I've heard about people, they're all taking a trip in a car and they're driving, and they're driving along, and then suddenly the wife says, sweetheart, I think I forgot to turn off the iron. 忘记把这个熨斗关掉。糟糕，必须转回。So when you leave the house, make sure that everything is, the lights are off, everything is unplugged, and everything is ready. So you can enjoy your vacation and you can sleep very well. Okay, does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And I find the older I
Makes sense.
get, the more I do things like that. Got to make sure everything is okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, just a few seconds left. We do have an email address. 我们电邮地址是 theoldprinciple@gmail.com. theoldprinciple@gmail.com. And our website, 我们的网站是 www.theoldprinciple.org. www.theoldprinciple.org. Hey, we've had a great time being with you, and we look forward to seeing you again.